Okay, Sofa Squad, so you already know if you've been following me on the podcast channel, we went over Stephan Sterns returning to the courtroom recently for hearing to suppress all of the horrible evidence on his phone. Now, at the time of this recording, Judge Karsten is expected to make his rulings on what the evidence, what's going to happen and whatnot sometime in June. So it hasn't happened as of yet. Now, also, there really hasn't even been any word on how the postponement is going to impact September's trial. Remember, there's two different trials going on, right? There's the first one for all the stuff on his phone, and then the one in September for what he allegedly did to Madeline Soto. Okay, so all that being said, we're going to be talking about this case. Mega trigger warning. If you already know, then you already know what this is about. It is not a cute one. It's not a pretty one. It's very horrible. And we'll specifically be talking about those motions that we read through on the podcast channel. I just want to come over here and kind of like talk about some of the main key points of them on this channel. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup at
Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Psh, there's a bed back there. Psh, I don't know when the sofa will be back, psh, but I know this much. Psh, this is a Paul. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Paul. If you're new here, if you're not new here, my name is still Paul. Okay. Now, also very quickly, y'all, the reason I've got this real exclusive Amazon chain on is because I am wearing my new microphone. So let me know whether, like, if you can give me some feedback. Number one, are you listening to this on like your TV? Like, how are you listening to it? Or do you have earbuds in? This is basically a wireless mic, and I have it at the lowest setting, but I'm also doing trying to hold it in different places. When I do it on my collar, it sounds weird. So I was like, well, let me try it on my necklace. Now, I was holding it like this, but if you follow me, you already know there's no way I could sit in this position right here. You know, I will be fumbling with it. I'll be doing stuff. It will not be good. So like I said in our little opening, today what we're going to be doing is going over the defense's claims and the state's rebuttal. Okay, now, for those who are like brand new to the Madeline Soto case, the Stephan Sterns case, here's an extremely quick 60-second, overview, whatever you want to call it. So Stephan Sterns was arrested in February 2024. He has been charged with homicide in the death of Madeline Soto. She was 13 years old. This was the daughter of his girlfriend, Jennifer Soto. Now, when she went missing, the investigation starts, the whole thing. And while they were doing this, the prosecution would end up filing an additional 60 charges related to the S battery, if you know what that means, and there you go, of a child and possession of S material, which included, and I'm going to put this up on the screen here, and we'll just go through it real quick. So we have 8 counts of S battery on a child under 12, 5 counts of S battery with a child 12 to 18 familial custody authority, 7 counts of lewd and lascivious molestation, 40 counts of unlawful possession of materials depicting S performance by a child, 10 or more images. Now, just quick like sofa sidebar on that, and I'll just say this in case I forget about it or whatever, but if he doesn't get any of this suppressed, I can't imagine him taking this to trial. Now, and again, I'll say this, let me go ahead and get in here. Ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no judge, ain't no cop, ain't none of that fancy credential stuff, okay? The only credentials I got is my sass. And, well, I used to have a sofa, but, well, it's gone too. So we might not have any credentials at this point, okay? But what I'm getting at is, I mean, I have no basis to make that claim. That's just my opinion based on what I've been watching and whatnot. And just, honestly, I would like to say common sense. The horrifying things on his phone that he was doing to poor Madeline, to me, it's you can't talk your way out of that, right? Which is obviously the reason why these motions are in place. So, in the latest filings, his defense team is seeking a motion to suppress. Now, we already know after we watched that 3-hour hearing, this only resulted in, the trial being pushed off, whatever, right? So let me just put up like a quick definition of motion to suppress just so we're all on the same page and we can keep going. The primary goal of a motion to suppress is to prevent evidence from being admitted into the court that was obtained through unlawful means, such as an illegal search or seizure. Okay, so now that we're all kind of on the same page here, let's go ahead and start getting into the motions to see what Stephan Sterns and his team are trying to say. So motion 1 is the state's response to the defendant's motion to suppress evidence obtained from unlawful searches of a cell phone. Now, the state opens up with this dialogue between Stephan Sterns and Detective Maria Tagler. She's with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I'm going to put this up on the screen here and let's look at it. You'll see the little highlighted parts that we have. Okay, so you'll see the conversation here on the screen, and the detective says, what kind of phone is this? And then Stephan says, an S23 Ultra, I think. And then the detective says, I don't know how to work this thing. And then Stephan says, I'm sorry, I barely know how to work it myself. And then the detective says, I'm an iPhone person. And then Stephan goes, oh. And then the detective says, is it okay if I go in your settings real quick? I just want to see if you're logged onto your Google. And then Stephan says, I am not logged onto my Google with that actually. And the detective says, is it okay if I check? And then Stephan, the defendant, says, yeah. Let's go over a few key points of this. Okay, so remember how Stephan was like, oh, I accidentally factory reset the phone and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you can already kind of see where that's headed in this direction, right? Now I have a Google Pixel, so I don't know how to like factory reset the phone on there. If you have the phone that he has, that S23 Ultra, let me know. Like if you know how to do it. But to me, factory reset is like a hard thing to do. Even on the realm of, and I hate using the term, but of butt dialing, right? Think about the Karen Reed case with all the butt dials. You know how like you can like throw your phone in your purse or in your pocket or whatever situation you have, and like by hook or crook, it'll unlock and do this, and you've called this and done that, whatever. That's the only way I could see a factory reset like what he's doing. Now, does that mean that I believe that? Absolutely not. We obviously know he 100% knew how to factory reset that phone, and he did it for a very specific reason. So also saying that, it looks like, you know, personally, I think he does know way more about technology than he is leading on to me. Now, also, numerous times, and we'll go over them in the other things too, it does seem like he is giving consent, even though it is in like a very casual kind of way. And I can see where like with law enforcement being like, okay, yeah, maybe we should have done blank and we should have dot our I's, cross our T's. I'm going to quote part of the motion here. Now, the prosecution indicates, and again, this is the quote part, warrantless searches are per se unreasonable pursuant to the 4th and 14th Amendments, unless there is a recognized exception to the warrant requirement, for which consent is a recognized exception of the warrant requirement. Now I'm going to keep going here and quote in some parts from this. The state further asserts that the scope of consent to search is generally what a typical reasonable person would understand the exchange of words under the circumstances to mean. Now, again, in this, to me, my personal opinion, my sofa, sidebar, unprofessional and credentialed opinion, the way I view it with all these conversations, we're going to go over some more here in a minute, and just look at what we're about to look at through this lens. To me, I see this consent. Now, again, is it consent in the context of, but I mean, they even offer him the thing or whatever. So I guess part of it is like, okay, did they sit here and say, here is a search warrant, we are going to do blank? But as you'll see when we go through this, I mean, this was offered, right? But oftentimes as we look at these cases, we see where it's almost like a casual, a nonchalant conversation going on. Okay, if you know where I got that from, you know what you know. But it's going on between like cops and defendant or whoever, right? Now the tricky thing is that with the defendants, they have something to hide, okay, obviously. So with him, there's going to be this hindsight. He already knows at this point in this conversation that they're having, he knows what he did. Okay, so obviously that's going on. Okay, this isn't like they're dealing with a completely innocent person who would not care if they look through their phone. Now, there might be some embarrassing things, like say maybe of like whatever that you might not want people to see, right? But this is not, I mean, this is horrifying what he had on his phone. So obviously he was trying to hide it. But anyways, let's keep going. So let's look at another couple of those little screenshots here. Detective Tagler says, do you mind if I just take a picture of your history? And defendant Stephan says, yeah, that's fine. Okay. Then there's this. Detective Tagler says, can you unlock this one more time, please? And Stephan says, sure. So there's that. Now on this, again, like so many of these cases that we watch with narcissists, whatever you want to call them, right? But the Sarah Boones, the Loris, they keep talking, right? This is the same thing that Stephan does, okay? Now, here's the thing too. Obviously, like I said a minute ago, Stephan's in the situation where he knows what he did, right? I mean, I know it's whatever, he hasn't been convicted yet, but in his mind, you can't, at minimum, you cannot deny the pictures. Pretend that for whatever reason, something came up to find out that he didn't do that to Madeline, okay? Like the murdering her. You cannot get around the pictures, right? So I don't even like saying alleged at this point, okay? It's like obvious, okay? Anyways, people like Stephan, people like Lori, people like Sarah, they want to keep talking there and try and talk their way out of it, and it doesn't work, okay? And he is no exception to this. Now, moments later, Detective Tagler is going to advise Stephan that they were going to hold on to his phone and that it would be returned when the law enforcement was done with it, okay? And then if all of like the previous consent wasn't enough for that, he tries to go in once more. So let's look at this little screenshot of the conversation now. So again, Detective Tagler says, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Your phone, I told you that I was going to hold on to it and that we would like to download your phone, right? And defendant says, who's Stephan, okay. Detective, is this something that I have your consent to do, or do I need to get a search warrant for your phone? We're gonna come back to that part. Stephan, it should be fine. Detective, you're okay with us going through your phone? Stephan, yes. Detective, okay, can I have the PIN to your phone? Stephan, 42586. Detective, 42586. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Now, timeout sofa sidebar. When this popped off, and remember like the clip, if you watched it, he sounds very unsure about this. Very unsure. And remember like parts of it, and we'll get to it or whatever, but he's like, you know, so-and-so was gonna, like my dad or whoever he's trying to get a hold of or whatever. It was the opposite reaction that you have if you're, and I know this isn't his child, but for all, I mean, it's his girlfriend's child. So if this was a completely innocent situation on his part, and it's like you weren't doing the things that he was doing to Madeline, like we're just gonna, you know, he is a caretaker, he is authority over Madeline, right? So if said child is missing and you're with the cops and you're in the car and they're like, hey, can we look at your phone? And let's just pretend that you have like some maybe risky selfies of yourself, right? Something that would be embarrassing of that nature. And then we're not even getting into pretend like he was completely innocent. Like he just, you know, whatever. That would be something where it's like, yeah, okay, well, here's the thing. Look, you can totally look through my phone, whatever you gotta do, but just know, like there's some embarrassing stuff of me on there. Okay, you know what? We've seen it all before. Totally cool. Okay, cool. Yep, there's my phone. Do what you need to do with it. There's no other answer, right? But Stephan sounds so scared. You could tell in that moment that he was like, oh, I'm done, right? Now, mind you, he probably thought that he got away with it because he did the factory reset. But nonetheless, it's like when you're doing something that Stephan has done to an innocent child and you document it in the way that he did on his phone, I personally think he was making money off of it somehow, but that's just my sofa opinion. That's not based in fact. That's just me, you know, like whatever. And obviously doing other stuff with it too, but I think he was definitely like probably selling some of those images and whatnot. So when you're doing that, even if you think you factory reset, you're going to get nervous, especially if you have taken the life of said child less than 24 hours before, okay? Now, so for me, in my opinion, at this point, it's very obvious that like Stephan and his defense team are like, okay, this phone situation is bad, right? It's really, really bad. You know, we've got to do whatever we have to do to get rid of the phone because you can't talk your way out of it. There's nothing you can say to it. So it's almost like their only hope for him is a technicality. Now, let's look at a couple of more of like the honestly absurd claims. So it says, the defendant claims that Detective Tagler overstepped the consent given by the defendant. Their motion and argument depends on his misleading and incomplete recitation of the limited consent he gave Detective Tagler. However, the defendant fails to discuss the fact that he unlocked his cell phone and handed it to Detective Tagler on 2 different occasions. The defendant also fails to acknowledge that he allowed and consented to Detective Tagler viewing map data, viewing and documenting the defendant's history, reviewing settings, and viewing the associated Google account and whether it was logged in. Okay, now here's my question on that, especially for anybody who's like, who's a professional, who's credentialed. Okay, pretend we're going down this path right here and like they get into it and they're just like, okay, well, once they got the thing into like the maps, I'm gonna make this part up, but this could be how it goes down or whatever. So say they look at the maps and like, where he went in his maps isn't adding up. And you know, we have this information over here, but why was he over there? So basically what I'm getting at is as they saw the part that he 100% consented to, that maybe raised red flags, and it was like, oh, we have more probable cause now. So because we got that, we're going to keep going to the phone, or you see what I'm saying? But again, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything. I don't know how that works. But I mean, obviously there was so much damning evidence on multiple layers in his phone that to me, it would seem like, well, if you get in there and you start finding one thing, that just gives you probable cause. But well, let's keep digging, right? Now I'm going to put up the heading of motion 2 and we'll get into that one. The state's response to defendant's motion to suppress evidence obtained from unlawful seizure of cell phone. Now, this motion, as well as the other ones, it relies very heavily on a lot of the information that was discussed earlier, some of that overview and whatnot. And once again, it just kind of seems like the defense is misrepresenting case law by going through and cherry picking out like very singular, like what, let's magnify on this one little point or this one little issue and then try and twist it into Sterns' favor. Now, again, is that their job? Yes. Is that what they do? Yes. Totally get it. I got it, right? However, it's just frustrating. But also, however, anybody would want a defense. Anybody would want somebody to go through and like pick these things out or whatever. It's just with cases like this, when it's so, and I chuckle at that because of the absolute horror and absurdity of it, because there's like, my first thought was, I was like, with cases like this, there is no defense, okay? I mean, that's really what I come down to. And again, put aside, we're gonna go off on a sofa sidebar again. There's so many sofa sidebars with this case, it just gets me going. So put aside the murder case, just this one that we're looking at right now. I mean, again, I get the right thing to say is that everybody gets a defense. Everybody want that, 100% agree with that. However, when you're dealing with the children, like that's such a vulnerable population. And then when it's something like this disgusting, nobody has time for that, right? And again, I don't know how other than a technicality you try and talk your way out of this. So this to me is showing this is all he has with this. If they don't get this stuff thrown out or suppressed, whatever, and he takes it to trial, I'm okay. But then I also think of the poor jury members that are going to have to sit there and see that vile, horrifying stuff on his phone. Can you imagine as a jury member, you're going in, thinking in your mind, well, I'm probably going to see some robbery stuff or drug stuff. And you end up having to look at this kind of thing. This changes it gives me goosebumps. This changes your life for the rest of your life, this stuff. Obviously, it does the victims, right? But these are the cases that will victimize so many people. Imagine these police officers probably have kids at home and they're popping in this phone and seeing that stuff. There is no defense. So I'm going to put my sofa sidebar soapbox away and let's keep going. Okay, so back to the motion. So the motion states, and I'm just going to quote it here. The first prong in the analysis for the court is to determine whether Detective Tagler had probable cause at the time that the defendant's cell phone was seized. Probable cause merely requires that the facts available to the officer would warrant a person of reasonable caution that certain items may be useful as evidence of a crime. And like I was just saying a minute ago with the probable cause stuff, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, right? There is so much probable cause, right? At least in my opinion. So let's read another part of the motion. I'm going to put it up here and we'll just read through it. So Detective Tagler and members of the law enforcement have probable cause to believe that there was evidence of a crime contained in the defendant's phone at the time of the seizure. At the time of the seizure, the following information was known to law enforcement. 1 blank, so Madeline, obviously, a 13-year-old child had been missing for over 24 hours. 2, the defendant was consistently identified as the last person to have seen Madeline prior to her disappearance. 3, law enforcement had tag reader evidence that the defendant was not being truthful with regard to his movements on February 26, 2024, including when and where the defendant claimed to drop Madeline off at school. Number 4, Madeline never arrived at school on February 26, 2024. The defendant factory reset his phone on February 26, 2024. 6, the defendant was alone with Madeline in the bedroom the night prior to Madeline's disappearance. 7, the defendant regularly utilized his cell phone to speak with Madeline. 8, the defendant, when confronted with inconsistencies which evolved in his statements, began adding additional explanations. 9, the defendant had his cell phone with him during a portion of the day on February 26, 2024. The defendant regularly used the location data and internet on his phone. And 11, the defendant's phone was attached to the defendant's Google account, even though the defendant denied being logged in. Collectively, these circumstances gave law enforcement probable cause to believe that the defendant had committed a crime against Madeline and that evidence of the crime would be found in the defendant's cell phone. I mean, again, and I'm just going to say this. Obviously, I have a bias. I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean, to me, it's like ransack his phone, okay? You already know. Okay, these cops, God bless them, they do this for a living, so they're dealing with this kind of people. Not every day. Like, obviously, they're dealing with other type of stuff, right? Like, this is, like, especially heinous. I get that. But what I'm saying is, like, when you're not lying about the stuff that he was lying about. Like it's just, that doesn't happen. So you don't lie about stuff like this in these circumstances. It's not normal. And they know, everyone everyone's life is on their phone. Okay, so again, I pray that a technicality does not get him off on this, but we'll see. Now, that being said, let's look at what the state had to say in their response, because they were like, yeah and no. Okay, so Detective Tagler, along with other detectives of the Orange County Sheriff's Office, had an objective fear of the imminent destruction of the evidence contained on the defendant's phone. The defendant had been evasive and deceptive in law enforcement interviews and was untruthful regarding his whereabouts the morning of Madeline's disappearance. The defendant had already attempted to destroy evidence contained on his cell phone by factory resetting the phone at some point during the late morning hours of February 26, 2024. Although the cell phone had been factory reset, there were still exigent circumstances supported by an objective fear of further destruction of evidence by the defendant. The defendant was also aware that law enforcement was interested in determining the Google account associated with the phone. The defendant was aware at that point that law enforcement had evidence that contradicted his claimed movements on February 26, 2024. It is reasonable to believe that the defendant knew he was under suspicion once Detective Tagler and Detective Acosta confronted him with inconsistencies and showed interest in the information contained on his cell phone. It's also reasonable to conclude that the defendant had the ability and incentive after the interview with Detective Tagler and Detective Acosta on February 27, 2024 to further destroy incriminating evidence contained on his phone. And 100%, he already tried to factory reset it, right? So it's like, of course he was going to do that. Anybody would, okay? Like, hello, he just, allegedly unalived Madeline, and already he's been doing this stuff to her for years. Of course he's going to try and get rid of the phone. That's the tricky thing. It's like so gross that there can be like this little, loophole to try and get through, right? Absolutely just makes me like not happy. Okay, it really ticks me off. Okay, so motion 3, and I'm going to put the title up, the little picture of the title here. So the state's response to defendant's motion to suppress evidence obtained from Google search warrant. Okay, so now in these other motions, the state was very clear that Sterns was aware that the digital forensic unit was going to perform a cell phone extraction on his device. To me, it seemed pretty obvious, right? Now, the content was reviewed, and I'm going to quote this here, pursuant to the defendant's consent. Now, obviously, we know that the content on the phone is these horrifying pictures of Madeline being essayed at various ages by him. So, following the protocol, Detective Taylor Heller wrote, and I'll quote here, an affidavit for search warrant for information within the defendant's Google account. Now, I'm going to, again, put an image up here from the part of the motion. We're just going to read through it together. So, and it just kind of starts off in a little bit mid-sentence here. But the day Madeline went missing, the affidavit indicates that during the investigation, it was discovered Stephan Sterns had several files of child abuse material involving Madeline on his cell phone, and the images were stored and backed up to his Google account, sustanet@gmail.com. Detective Heller also discusses his experience with Google LLC. Detective Heller further details in his affidavit for search warrant the Google Cloud Storage services, specifically stating account holders users can utilize the service called Google Drive to store pictures, videos, and other electronic files remotely and without taking up memory space on their personal computer, smartphone, and physical storage media. Now, as you can imagine, the state continued on and on, right? Just ripping apart his argument and whatnot. And like I said at the beginning of the video, everything's been postponed at this point. We don't know if this is going to end up postponing the September trial. That's one thing with the cases that we follow and whatnot. It's very hard to say, yep, it's going to happen here, because you never know, right? The wheels of justice are slow, and they can be a little bit all over the place as things play out. I was really, really hoping to get this one underway, obviously for justice's sake, right? And the next thing, just to, to see what happens. Again, like I said, in my personal, unprofessional, sofa, non-credentialed opinion, I don't see how or why he would take this right here to trial if none of this gets thrown out. If all this evidence is allowed, to me, the only option would be to plea deal. Now, I did have this other thought too. What if he's doing this to stall? Remember the phone calls that he did? Like with the parents from the phone calls from prison channel? So when he's talking about kind of preparing, and he's aware, like, yeah, this is not good if I go to the big house and that kind of thing, whatever. Now, obviously, he's still denying it over there, but whatever. What I'm getting at is he might be like, I know I'm never leaving prison again alive. So the longer I make this go, the safer I am while I'm in county jail. I'm honestly surprised he survived county jail, but that's a little bit different. It's more like the inmates aren't running that show and the law enforcement people probably don't want that on their name. But once you're convicted and sent off, I mean, if you follow these channels, Jumpsuit Pablo, I think his name is, and Ian Bick, and these, you know, dudes who are like interviewing like everyone from like former like hardcore inmates to people who have worked in these like mega penitentiaries, and they're telling you how this goes down for people like Stephan. It's not cute, it's not pretty, nor does it need to be, right? Like these dudes like him don't go over well, and it never ends well for them most of the time. I don't know if it's something where he could even get into solitary confinement or whatever you call it, protective custody. I have no idea, so we'll see. I do feel like in this, the only thing, like if I try and remove my bias and again, non-legal opinion, I'm like, yeah, it would have been nice if they went ahead and got the search warrant and just did it, so there is no question about it. Hindsight's 2020, and it was very obvious it was going to take place, and they knew they had to make the call. It's one of those things where it's almost like, if we leave, do anything here to where this man has possession of this phone, whatever, he is going to destroy the evidence, period, end of story. He's already tried to, right? He's lying through his teeth. He's going to do whatever he has to do. So almost like better to do, how do you say it? Do something to ask for forgiveness type situation. And I'm not giving like that just a blanket statement, but it's something like this where it's like, this girl's missing. They probably immediately knew when these lies came up, where this is probably a recovery situation and this dude is sketchy as you know what. So they were like, we need to get in this phone. That's going to be our, and guess what? It was the answers they were looking for, right? It did help them find out what was going on. So we'll see what takes place. So this is my self-opinion, my final self-opinion. I'm curious to hear yours. I think he's either going to, so let's say this, they keep all this stuff, right? They're like, no, you're not suppressing this. Nope. He's either going to be like, okay, well, what's your plea? And then do that, and then let's wait till September. Or he's going to be like, well, no, let's go to trial. And to me, if he goes to trial with none of the suppression stuff, then I think he's stalling and just trying to avoid going to prison. But again, I don't know, right? I don't know him. I don't know his defense team. I'm not a lawyer, none of that stuff. So anyways, that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you're still watching, guess what? I appreciate it. Also, don't forget, let me know ASMR. Where are we at with this? Not the pendant, but the microphone. Let me know in the comment section. And while you are down that comment section doing that, and I do appreciate it, if you could drop some little sofas off for myself, Rosco in spirit, Bo who's sleeping there, Luke who's sleeping over there, and being shockingly good this whole video, might I add. I'm very surprised. But if you could leave little sofas for all of them, and the most important, the Sofa Squad, I do appreciate y'all. That way we'll have a place to hang out, talk about this case and all the other ones we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we all gather around the sofas and do that, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that, hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.